Solo Leveling, a part of the Webtoon anime burst that brought you such shows as Tower of God, God of High School, Noblesse, Relife, and many more. Now, I haven't seen the last two I named, but of what I have seen, Solo Leveling is the best adaptation of the bunch. And for a moment there, it was right on JJK's heels in terms of notoriety, and for good reason. We haven't really gotten an anime like Solo Leveling without it being a weird, goofy isekai that immediately runs off the rails. And what I'm referring to is the RPG-like aspect of the show, because everything else is very much a normal mix of popular anime stuff, like, and excuse me if I pronounce anything wrong, Jinwoo's transformation from little normal anime boy guy to an entirely different, taller, more muscular, better looking guy. That's standard, and the whole Hunter Association very on the nose. Even the world beyond the magic system seems to be just our normal modern society that's pretty much unaffected by magic going on. It's literally just a traffic inconvenience at one point. Even the two main magic systems in place seem pretty simple at first glance. By the face, or the outside system, there's normal, no magic people who may or may not awaken to magic powers. But should they awaken to all the power they will ever have. Put a little asterisk there. And that power is categorized as such. You got your bare bones RPG party mechanics in play. You can awaken powers that align with classes like mage, warrior, and healer, and you group up with other awakened people to go tackle dungeons. Sounds familiar, right? Like a video game. Well, hold on to your skeleton, because people are stealing those now, and listen to this. Remember that asterisk I made earlier? Well, let's address that. Under normal circumstances, a person only ever gets one awakening, but very rarely a person will undergo a second awakening, and upon second awakening, they gain more power with a definite cap that is truly all the power they will ever have. And our protagonist goes through just this. However, because he's special, he gets the ultimate upgrade and is now able to basically infinitely gain more power through a much more one-to-one video game-like system where he can gain experience, level up, do quests, gain money, buy items, weapons, and clothing from a shop. And that is a very simple explanation, but that brings me to the main point of this video. That's kinda all we get. Like, yeah, there are some finer details and some broader nuances, but for the most part, this system just kind of works on trust me bro sentiments. Like, for example, we get little to no explanation about the items Jinwoo is buying. Like, how much health does any one potion restore, and for that matter, how much damage is any one enemy doing? How much money is Jinwoo making versus how much things cost in the shop? How much experience does any enemy give versus how much is needed per level? Things like this, while they seem small and unnecessary, that's what make an RPG and inform the decisions you make by all those small things coming together to create stake in the situation. And that's not to say Solo Leveling has no stakes, but it certainly is a blurred line when Jinwoo has access to the shop anywhere at all times and presumably has more than enough money to buy whatever he needs in terms of health and stamina potions and such. And it's not incredibly hard to use in any situation, as we've seen in at least 2 boss fights that Jinwoo can easily just hide and grab a potion anytime he needs. And even the potion limit we saw imposed that one time against the Cerberus boss was sort of unnecessary and seemed like it was done to quickly create tension in a moment where the author realized there was none. But if we had known those things I mentioned earlier, like how much money Jinwoo had, how much potions cost, how much damage is the boss doing, all that tension is there through those mechanics just waiting to be tapped into, and we always skirt it but never get quite there with Jinwoo's system. But even with the base power system, there are levels to the powers everyone has. Through a letter ranking system, D through S, which is pretty standard for an anime show, but all that really does is indicate that a higher rank should, in theory, be stronger than a lower rank, and usually that checks out, but in the rare instances where it doesn't, I'm left wondering why it felt so arbitrary that lower ranking party beat the higher ranking, and that's probably because the math literally isn't mathing, and sure, you don't want to bog down a new anime adaptation that has to make a lot of money with things like addition, subtraction, and probability probability, but I feel like there's at least a happy medium we could come to where the more advanced mechanics don't have to be necessarily fleshed out or even gameplay consistent. We just need a little bit more information on what's happening in the midst of these battles and crucial moments to give more context to what we're seeing. Because, for example, the life elixir that Jinwoo needs for his mom who's in a magic coma, why and how is it being offered as a quest reward beyond just motivation? Because Jinwoo was already in full swing before this was offered, and had it not been offered, he probably would still be on the same path. And how can Jinwoo trust that any of this is what it says it is? And again, you might be saying to yourself, that's not the point of the story, but isn't it? I mean, yes, the story is more than just its power system, but the RPG element of this anime seems secondary to the flow of the story. But in a role-playing game, the role-playing is what makes the flow of the story. And speaking of which, Jinwoo's class barely ever comes into play, and the one major time it does, the system is basically steering him towards a different class than the one he was headed for. So what's the point of having a class in the first place? Why not just have him only be one class in the first place, out the gate, and just have the same abilities he was gonna get anyway and just theme and name them in a way that aligned with his class? Now, I don't have all the answers, nor am I gonna sit here and act like I could have done a better job, but I think there's a lot of untapped, and say it with me now for the millionth time, potential. And I would say there's a whole layer there that we're missing out on, just on the basis of don't make it too bloated or complicated for the masses. And while I somewhat get it, I feel like anime that don't lean into their niche ultimately end up more popular, but less fulfilling. And you can see that with almost every big name anime for the last 20 years. Anytime they lean away from the things that make up the more fractional parts of their story, they gain a wider audience, but their core weakens. And if I'm honest, one of the biggest reasons I started Solo Leveling was because it had the RPG elements it did and didn't seem like a wacky world away type deal. And I like that, but as I've gotten into it, I feel like that aspect that made me join was just an overlay for a pretty generic Todd to God story that anime knows all too well. However, all that being said, I'm not dropping Solo Leveling, nor do I think it's been a bad experience. It's actually been a very good one. The animation is on point, the pacing is fine, I can't recall any out-of-pocket moments. And even with what little we have on the power systems, both the basic and Jinwoo's own special, neither are throwing the power scaling off the rails. Overall, it's a very 7 out of 10, and I think we need to start putting some real respect on our 7s, because they aren't the best, but damn it, they work hard to get where they are. And I still think if they dig into the power system a bit more, we might have a serious contender for a mainstream behemoth of an anime like JJK or even My Hero. But they need to put a bit more stock into their own concept and the audience. But that's all I got for now. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe, join, or hit the thanks button if you can. I genuinely appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed this video because I also appreciate you watching. So until next time, peace.
That thunder on me clap, make a nigga think before he act. Have a nigga dying on his back, then we double back. Shooters leaving rubber where you at, that's why niggas never wanna match.